Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are ready to start your weekend. I know I am. I have not been feeling well. Today I just started to start feeling better. My voice is starting to come back. It's kind of iffy, but I'll tell you, I went to Starbucks today to work, and I remember that they had this drink called the medicine ball. They actually call it, it's actually got an official name like the honey citrus tea or what have you, but the nickname for it is medicine ball. And I drank that. It's got like tea, honey, some type of citrus stuff in it, and it really helped. And then on top of that, I just guzzled tons of water, so I feel a lot better now than I did when I first woke up. And it was very difficult because I actually woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't get back to sleep. And I didn't get back to sleep until like 7:30 in the morning, and then I was only able to stay asleep for like 45 minutes. So I should sleep well tonight. But I'm here. And you're here. And that makes me glad. All right, let's use in the chat. DB Ryder, where's my F-15? You're going to have to hit up the president about that. You know? Other than that, I don't know what to tell you. Hit up Tom Cruise. Didn't he have an F-15? David Gray in the house. What's going on, brother? Yeah, honey is good. I mean, especially if you're having throat issues. And for me, my throat feels okay for the most part, unless I'm talking a lot. But it was the coughing. This morning I was coughing a lot, and I'm not coughing quite as much now. So hopefully I'm at the end of this thing, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be fully back to normal, because I've got some other stuff I need to talk about. I'm supposed to be chiming in on this whole Kim Klacik and Candace Owens thing tomorrow. So hopefully I will be up to it. But we've got some stuff today to talk about. Very interesting stuff. Before I get started, if you want to support my work, please join my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. You can see the link in the show notes. Again, that's afreshperspective.locals.com. Now that my voice is back for the most part and I have more energy, I'll be putting even more content up there. I've been digging more into critical race theory, guys, and I'm going to be putting some stuff behind the paywall that you guys are going to want to check out. Very interesting, especially when it concerns free speech and hate speech. It's the stances that I'm seeing are very interesting. Not too surprising, but it's important to know about this stuff because this is one of those things that's kind of flying under the radar. I'm hearing it being mentioned, but I'm not really seeing people doing a deep dive on it. And I understand why, because critical race theory is a complex theory. It's not quite as cut and dry as some people make it sound, but I'm going to be exploring various aspects of it because it's important. Again, if we're going to oppose it, we need to know what we're opposing, and we need to take away that talking point that the left has, that, oh, you guys don't even know what it is, which is BS, because from what I'm seeing, a lot of people on the left don't even know what it is either. So I think a lot of people just don't know what critical race theory is. But, I mean, as with these things, that's usually how it goes. But also, if you want to do a one-time donation, where's my thing at? See, my StreamYard isn't working. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to switch. This is it. I'm tired of it. I'm always having issues. My CashApp and Venmo are in the show notes, so if you want to do a one-time donation, I appreciate that too. If you join my online community, though, it's only $4.99 per month. So less than a Starbucks would be. But one-time donation, you can do it here. Now, let's get started. Oh, by the way, the latest episode of my audio podcast also dropped today. You can look it up at freshperspective.locals.com. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. You can get it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I don't think the other one is up anymore, my old one, but just in case, the one with the black logo, that's the one that you want. That's the most up-to-date. And I had some very interesting things to talk about, especially when it concerns the issue of being pro-black. I also talked about what's going on in Minneapolis since they decided to defund the police. And I also talked about what Florida's doing as far as foreign interference. So you've heard me talk a little bit about that, but I go a little bit more into detail in my audio-only podcast. So without further ado, let's get started. And the first topic, I'm going to be talking about what our President Joe Biden just recently announced. when it comes to guns, right? And we all knew that he had a very anti-gun agenda. Like, he laid that out even before he took office, right? And he's trying to he has a series of things that he wants to do through legislation when it concerns background checks, curbs on assault weapons, magazine sizes, and things like that. Sounds like he might want to do some things by executive order, and he's going to run into some problems. The issue is that he can't really pass a lot of this radical legislation through Congress because while the Democrats do control both chambers of Congress, they don't have as much of a hold on it. Like with the House, they have a 5-seat lead. So, but even so, even if some Democrats dissent, they're not getting anything through the House. But even if they get stuff through the House, I mean, they have a very slim majority in the Senate. And we have people like Senator Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who are okay with bucking their party when they feel it's necessary. And both in particular are very big on bipartisanship. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of legislation that's just passed along party lines as long as those two are in office and as long as they stay strong, because as you can see, the Democrats are really pressuring them. But the article that I'm going to be quoting from tonight comes from LibertyNation.com. Again, check it out. That's where my colleagues are. And I tend to do one article from Liberty Nation for each live stream. The link to this article is in the show notes, so if you want to follow along or if you want to read it later, check it out. This one is called Joe Biden Coming After Guns. It's written by Mark Angelides, who happens to be my favorite British person from across the pond. Great guy. And he wrote an article on what Biden plans to do and some of the issues that the administration might run into as he's, trying to crack down on guns. And what's kind of sickening to me about this is that he's using the rise in crime. He's basically exploiting that to push through gun measures that he knows won't actually solve the problems that are going on. I'll get to that in a second, though. That's actually an issue I'm going to be going deeper into probably next week as well. I just wrote an article about it today. But I'll read from the article. Quote, President Joe Biden has unveiled his plans to curb the increasing rise in crime afflicting the nation. As previewed by White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, the administration is focused specifically on gun crime rather than other forms of lawlessness, which have also seen a major increase. The President and Attorney General Merrick Garland outlined a number of measures on June 23rd that they feel will check the explosion in crime predicted for the summer months. And that's the thing, as things start to get hotter, as we get closer into summer, they are expecting the crime rate to increase. Now, Biden's not going to address the underlying issue as to why crime is increasing, but anybody want to guess why that's happening? Anybody want to guess why crime has risen over the past year or so? Major cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, Los Angeles, Baltimore, and a lot of others, major cities, have seen a very distinct rise in crime over the past year. And that's something I'll be talking about at another time. Like I said, I just wrote an article about it. But put your guess in the chat, and I'll when I get finished with this topic, I'll go back. I think you guys already know. Anyway, the issue here obviously is going to be the constitutionality, and especially when it concerns the scope of the plan that Biden wants to put into place. So Mark writes, quote, the president said that his strategy would work on strengthening background checks, banning what he terms assault rifles, community policing, and a ban on high-capacity magazines. Now, Biden said, quote, talk to most responsible gun owners. They'll tell you there's no possible justification for having 100 rounds in a magazine. Now, I know my audience is very big on the Second Amendment. I don't think I have a whole lot of gun control people in my audience, so most of you guys know that's BS, right? I'm not even a gun person yet, and I know that's BS. Most gun owners will say, maybe I don't need it, but who cares? It's the Second Amendment. Screw you. Leave me alone. Now, the only part that I would actually agree with here is the community policing aspect. However, I don't see how this can be dealt with at the federal level, right? I mean, if you're going to implement community policing, that's going to be done at the local level. So that sounds like a smokescreen to me, like almost like a red herring. I don't see what Biden can do here. The article continues, quote, he also outlined that gun dealers who sell to customers who are not eligible to own firearms or who refuse to cooperate with tracing requests from the ATF will be targeted. Biden said, quote, if you willfully sell a gun to someone who's prohibited from possessing it, if you willfully fail to run a background check, if you willfully falsify a record, my message to you is this. We'll find you and we will seek your license to sell guns. So he's doing his own like Liam Neeson thing right here. I'll find you. I'll track you down. Let's keep going. Now, here's what's kind of funny about this, right? Obviously, Biden either doesn't understand the issue of the Second Amendment or he just doesn't care. I kind of lean towards he just doesn't care. He's been in office for 50 million years. He knows what the Second Amendment is about. Again, he just doesn't really care. And again, everything that he listed off, he's saying he's doing this to deal with the rising crime across the nation. Now, just take a little, just consider this. How would any of what he's talking about actually decrease crime? Especially when you take into consideration the real reason why we are experiencing a spike in homicides and murders. Anyway, Biden, did what the left always does. He said, quote, from the day it was passed, the Second Amendment limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. Now, Mark writes, at the time of its writing, the people who could not own firearms were slaves and Native Americans. And obviously, that was a discriminatory policy. Those laws even went into effect even after slaves were freed. It is the very beginning of the gun control movement, which is racist as hell. It's still racist, but it was really blatantly racist back then. Now, here's something that's interesting that Mark points out. He says, quote, in terms of what weapons could be owned, the intent was that the weaponry would keep pace with the time. In fact, many of the ships and cannons employed during the American Revolution were privately owned, demonstrating that individuals were not only allowed, but expected to hold arms of equal power to that of the government. And so this I like how he ties this in because he goes back to President Joe Biden's comments when he said, if you think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. Well, the intent of the Second Amendment was, and the expectation was that the citizenry would have firepower on par with that of the government. Why? Because the primary reason why the Second Amendment was passed in the first place was to prevent the government from becoming tyrannical. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of what would happen if the government decided to become tyrannical and we needed to take up arms. That's a different debate. I don't think it would go the way that people on the left argue it would, but I think that's a conversation, worth happening. Now, I'm not going to get into the rest of the article. Again, check it out on libertynation.com. It's good stuff. Check out my stuff on libertynation.com. Check out everybody's stuff on libertynation.com. Very high quality writing. I dig it. But here's the thing, and I'm going to go to the chat here to see if you were able to guess why it is that the crime rate is going up. Let's see. I know you guys got it because I've got the best followers. Let's see. Hey, Patricia, nice to see you. Glad you're here. I missed you. Let's see. Come on. I know at least one of you had to have gotten it. Pushover DAs and judges? Not really, although that does play into it. It does. Let's see. I'll give you another hint. What has the left been pushing since a certain event happened in May of last year? The people committing the crime are already illegal gun owners. Now, that does answer my question as to why Biden's measures wouldn't do a damn thing to stop the rising crime rate. And he knows it. They just want to have more control over the type of firearms you're allowed to own. I mean, and the police can't really protect you all that much either. So it doesn't make much sense. And he is exploiting this issue. Let's see. Let's see if anybody got it. Aw, come on, y'all. Okay, I'm gonna give you the answer, and you're gonna do a face palm when I say it. No, somebody got it. Racer Dave. Why did you have that twice? I mean, I think once is enough. We know you're Racer Dave. Anyway, yes, ding, ding, ding. Give the man a cigar because of defunding the police. Now, in the cities that I mentioned, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Chicago, Baltimore, Los Angeles, each of them passed measures to defund the police, to cut the budget. And not just cut the budget and reallocate some funds, they cut the budget in a way that resulted in fewer police officers on the street. You know who else did that? Austin. Our crime rate is going up. Ours isn't nearly as bad as some of the others, not yet. But it is getting into that territory. It's trending in that direction. And I would imagine that in other cities, other than the ones that I mentioned, crime is trending up as well. Minneapolis, same thing. On my podcast, I talk about a Minneapolis couple who is suing the city for refusing to have enough police to keep people safe. There are men, women, and children, especially children, dying because they defunded the police. And guess who's getting hit the hardest by this? I mean, it's not hard to guess. Black America is getting hit the hardest by this. And I actually wrote an article about this. The vast majority of the increases that are happening in these cities when it comes to homicide victims are black. Now, I'm not saying it's not affecting anybody else, but it is but the way it's affecting the black community is leaps and bounds above that of anybody else. I believe like Latinos were a close second in some cases, but more black people are dying because they defunded the police. And President Joe Biden is responding by exploiting Black death to push a gun control agenda that he knows won't solve the problem. I'm not going to get too deep into that because when I wrote that article today, I was so pissed off when I saw the data. It is ridiculous. And yes, I do believe that proponents of defunding the police have blood on their hands. Now, firstly, I blame the people who did it, right? I mean, obviously, you blame the people who pulled the trigger. But if you are enabling and empowering these people by taking police off the street, when you know that 81% of black people don't want that to happen, how can I see that as anything other than racism? You're using a policy that you know is going to negatively, disproportionately impact the black community, and you're doing it against their wishes. Instead of pushing for police reform, like most black people want, it's just, you're just going to do whatever the hell you want to do because you know, as a white progressive, because that's who's pushing this stuff. I'm not saying that there aren't black progressives doing this too, but this is a white progressive endeavor. You know that you're going to be safe in your little gated community. You can advocate for defunding the police, and people are dying so that you can virtue signal and pretend like you care about black people when you really don't. And here's the thing. Here's why I'm coming so harsh on this. And I know some people didn't like me saying that defunding the police is a white supremacist initiative. Yes, if crime goes up in black communities, that hurts the entire community. It's not just the people that are dying. It's the lives that are ruined. It's the fact that businesses don't want to open up there. It's the fact that it drives away what market is there. So, yeah, it's a policy that further widens those wealth and income disparities that place black Americans behind white Americans. That's how the left defines white supremacy. So, yeah, this is white supremacist. And it is being done. I think, here's my thing. Here's why I'm coming down so hard on them. Because it is very difficult for me to believe that the people who are pushing for defunding the police could not have foreseen this. I mean, if you have an IQ higher than that of a turtle, you could easily see that, yeah, decreasing the number of police is going to result in more crime, more death, more property destruction, more burglary. And I might be able to buy the notion that maybe some of these people are just stupid. I mean, sometimes people are just dumb. But there is no way that the majority of the people who push for this didn't at least consider the notion that this would impact the black community and a lot of other people as well, and they just didn't care. So now you have Biden saying, oh, great, we can use this to push gun control. That's what they're doing. They don't, it's like I keep saying, they don't give a shit about us. I don't think they really care about anybody, but when it comes to black people, they are willing to put our lives in danger if it means pushing their agenda. If Biden really cared, he would say, no, forget about the guns. We need to stop this whole defund the police stuff. Now, I know he wouldn't be able to enact a policy on that, but he could use his bully pulpit, but he won't, again, because he doesn't care. Now, there are moderate Democrats who care. They were mad that people were pushing that in the first place, but guess what? They don't run these cities. So, what do you guys think? All right, let's see. Okay, I disagree that it was defunding the police measure that led to the spike. Well, yeah, I'd like to hear your alternative. And I'm not saying that there aren't other factors that contributed to this, but I think defunding the police was one of the main ones. Again, I'm seeing it here in Austin. Our crime rate is going up. And when our city council voted to defund the police, this wasn't something that was going to take place this year. They did it immediately. And we have far fewer officers here in Austin. We don't have enough to take care of these issues. And crime is going up. Also, when your city council comes out and says, hey, we're going to defund the police, what message do you think that sends to criminals? And that's what that's what this couple that I'm talking about in Minneapolis, that's what they said. That was the argument that they made. And they see the crime going up. And again, there might be other factors, but there is no way that defunding the police has nothing to do with this. Police are stretched thin. They're taking longer to show up to 911 calls. They're not able to handle every single different call that they get, and it's because they are understaffed. Let's see what else we got here. That too, Scott Messick. And a secondary effect is the demoralization of the police that are left, making them less effective. That, and it's also making more of them quit. That's happening here in Austin too. We had double the amount of officers quit. Same with Minneapolis, I believe, too, and other cities. So it just has a rippling effect that is detrimental to the community. Let's see. 1-2 punch. Lockdowns, economic hardship, less cost. Yeah, that plays into it too. I'll acknowledge that lockdowns that they played into it too. But I wonder if the crime rate's going to go down when more and more states lift their lockdown orders. I kind of don't think it will. It may drop a little bit, but as long as these people are defunding their police, as long as there are fewer officers, it's easier to commit crimes and get away with them. Let's see. Yeah, businesses shutting down have been a significant factor. But even here in Austin, the crime rate's still going up, and we're basically open. Like, I've been going to the store without a mask on. It's been kind of beautiful, actually. It's funny because you walk into the store and then they're like, oh, crap, I forgot my mask. And I'm like, oh, I don't need it anymore. But I digress. But yeah, I do think that those are factors too. But again, it's very hard for me to believe that the fact that there were fewer officers, because again, a lot of these things took place immediately. So not only are like Baltimore, oh no, it wasn't Baltimore. It was one of the cities that was doing a total it was multiple cities who were doing a hiring freeze on police officers. And they're quitting and right, they get demoralized. They're not doing their jobs. A lot of them are taking sick leave. Like, all that together means fewer police. Fewer police means more crime. It's just the way it is. Let's see. If that is harsh, you need to put on a better war face. Y'all don't want to see my war face. Yeah, I don't let myself get too angry because I don't like who I become when I'm angry. But yeah. Let's see what else we got. Oh, Scott Messick. Chicago ended their lockdowns 2 weeks ago, and a man and woman were pulled out of their car and executed last week. Yeah. See, ending the lockdowns in Chicago isn't going to do anything. And Chicago is one of the cities. And Mayor Lori Lightfoot proposed an $80 million cut to the police department. Now, I'm not sure if they've actually done it yet. But again, if you're already doing that, what message does that send to your officers? I would imagine that a lot of them are quitting too. I'm sure if I went and researched it, I'd find that a lot of Chicago police officers are quitting or taking sick leave. I mean, when you send that message, then obviously it's not an overall positive thing to do. And again, I want police reform. Most black people do. There's a consensus on that. I want police reform until we become an anarchist society, at least, right? Because, I mean, you don't end police brutality. Well, I guess you can end police brutality by cutting the number of police, because there are fewer police to abuse people and more black people are dying, so there are few black people to abuse. So I guess that's one way to do it. Assholes. I mean, seriously. Let's see. Between COVID lockdowns and defunding the police, what did our leaders think would happen? Exactly. And again, I think some of this is stupidity, but when it comes to, I get with the COVID lockdowns, they may not have foreseen some of those consequences. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. When it comes to the defunding the police, there is no excuse. Like that's just common sense, right? So let me continue. What else we got here? Yeah, we're going to talk about critical race theory. Not the theory itself, but one of the left's arguments about it. Now, this is an article that I wrote on Red State. Actually, the next article is from Red State too, written by me. And you know how a lot of people on the left, their big argument, because there's this huge debate over critical race theory. I'm sure you've all seen it in Loudoun County, Virginia. Parents getting angry in other areas of the country. And the left is defending it, and they're lying about it, which is expected. One of their biggest arguments is that, one, people on the right don't know what critical race theory is. There's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that, but it's not 100% true. And I think a lot of people at least know enough about it to know what some of the issues are. Now, some of the things that they think are critical race theory is really just woke theology, which is equally as dangerous. But as I'm reading about it, I'm seeing that a lot of this, some of it kind of does teach, but not really, not as directly as some of the teachers have used it. But when you read about critical race theory, you can see how somebody might use it in the way that it's being used in the classroom to separate children into privileged or oppressor and oppressed. So far, I haven't read anything in critical race theory that explicitly says that should happen. At least not yet. I'm sure I'll come across it if it's there. But again, with the stuff that I am reading, I am seeing how it could be used in that way. So the second argument that the left is making, that is a lie, that is that critical race theory is not being taught in the classroom. Now, this is one of those lies that is a lie kind of by omission and not by commission, because technically they're right. Teachers aren't going into their classrooms in their 6th grade or 5th grade and saying, okay, now class, now let's go open up your critical race theory book and we're going to talk about critical race theory. Nobody's doing that. And to be fair, I don't think that most teachers are teaching elements of critical race theory. I think that there are a lot doing it, and that's what this story is about. And I'm going to get to the rest of what I was going to say after I talk about this. But again, the argument that teachers are not teaching the theory is the argument that I'm dealing with. Now, the Zen Education Project. Now, if you're familiar with Howard Zinn, he was a historian. He died a few years ago. Very left-wing. And he wrote a book called The People's History of the United States. I read it when I was in college. Very interesting book. I would recommend reading it. But it's not all accurate. It's got some issues with accuracy. But there's this project that I don't know if he set it up or the people set it up in his name, but it's called the Zen Education Project. And this is a resource for teachers who want to teach more left-leaning stuff in their classrooms. They put on a pledge, and last time when I wrote the article, which was yesterday, about 4,420 teachers had signed a pledge to continue teaching critical race theory or elements of critical race theory, even if their states ban the teaching. That is over 4,000 teachers that signed this pledge, which tells me that there are more who will continue doing it even if they don't know about the pledge or what have you. Now, the Zen Education Project, on its website, they say that their purpose is to promote and support the teaching of people's history in classrooms across the country. Now, excuse me. On the website, the organization claims that, quote, lawmakers in at least 21 states are attempting to pass legislation that would require teachers to lie to students about the role of racism, sexism, heterosexism, and oppression throughout U.S. history. Again, that's what this is saying, the Zen Education Project. And it also says, it claims that the states that are trying to ban some of the elements of critical race theory, quote, aim to prohibit teachers from teaching the truth about this country. It was founded on dispossession of Native Americans, slavery, structural racism, and oppressions. And structural racism is a defining characteristic of our society today. That is a part of critical race theory. So that's the issue that this organization is taking with the effort to ban critical race theory. That last line, structural racism is a defining characteristic of our society today. Now, critical race theorists, the people who pioneered the movement, will tell you that racism is deeply embedded in the structures of American society and American governance. And the teachers are signing a pledge saying that they're going to continue to teach that principle along with others, even if it's banned. Now, the site singles out the Missouri bill, which bans any lesson that, quote, identifies people or groups of people, entities, or institutions in the United States as inherently, immutably, or systemically sexist, racist, anti-LGBT, bigoted, biased, privileged, or oppressed. So this is a direct banning of what critical race theory teaches, at least this specific principle. Now, the group contends that refusal to teach about police violence, the prison system, and the wealth gap, and also other issues, is designed to, quote, deceive them, the students, not educate them. And they argue that, quote, this history helps students understand the roots of inequality today and gives them the tools to shape a just future. Now, it gets worse, because the Zen Project also takes issue with the fact that the 1619 Project, along with curriculum from the Southern Poverty Law Center, you guys know who that is, BLM at School, and a series of other far hard leftist organizations wouldn't be allowed in the classroom. Now, here's the thing. None of this is critical race theory. The 16 Project is not critical race theory. That's a misconception that I've seen some people talk about. Southern Poverty Law Center isn't necessarily critical race theory as well, although I would think that they have some overlap. And Black Lives Matter, same thing, not directly critical race theory, but there's going to be some overlap. But they want far leftist teaching in these schools, even aside from critical race theory. This is something that we're missing, because we need to be focusing on this stuff too. And we need to be able to know the difference between critical race theory and the other stuff, because if we just label everything critical race theory, that gives the left an opening to say, oh, see, you guys don't know what it is, and it's going to discredit us. Now, the pledge, it says, quote, we, the undersigned educators, will not be bullied. We will continue our commitment to develop critical thinking that supports students to better understand problems in our society and to develop collective solutions to those problems. Yada, 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 blah, 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 whine, whine, whine. Now, here's the thing. This also puts the lie to the notion that, well, they say that teachers aren't teaching critical race theory. Like I said, that's technically correct. However, that doesn't mean that they can't teach the elements of critical race theory. If they're teaching students that America is a racist nation, that it's inherently and structurally racist, that is critical race theory. Don't let any leftist tell you any different. They are lying to you. I can pull you the quotes from the book. As a matter of fact, I remember I mentioned that I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I started reading another critical race theory book, and I put a bunch of quotes on Twitter. The left will, another lie, the third lie that the left will tell you is that critical race theory is just about teaching history. That's why they're lying and saying that these bills that would ban the theory would mean that teachers can't teach about slavery or Jim Crow or racism or things like that. That is a lie. They still can teach about that. What they're trying to ban is the notion that white people are inherently oppressors and that America is a racist nation whose foundation is racist. Now, you know my position on banning. We will make a mistake if we think that banning is the end-all, be-all. We need to come up with a better way of seeing the country. And we need to be able to sell that idea. And the way we're doing it right now is incompetent. But that's a whole other conversation. But that doesn't mean that the left is innocent and that they're not lying about this too. These people are teaching critical race theory in schools, guys. They're not teaching all the precepts of it. They're not teaching every single aspect of it, but they are teaching elements of it. So they don't have to teach the actual theory, because really it'd be kind of impossible. If you read about critical race theory, it's very complex. You can't just go to a third grade classroom and just teach that stuff. They won't have any idea what the hell you're talking about. But you can distill some of those ideas in a way that they can understand. So this type of teaching, along with the woke theology that they've been teaching for years under our noses, because they know that a lot of parents aren't paying attention. They just assume that the teachers are acting in good faith and not trying to indoctrinate their kids. That's where this whole thing comes from. So I wanted to point this out because I think some people they're not going to be able to say, oh, well, we don't know what classes it's being taught in. Well, yeah, we have seen some news stories, but when they say it's not being taught in the classroom, this is direct proof that they're full of shit. So you're welcome. You're welcome. No, but seriously, I mean, I wanted to expose that lie because it's important. You know, if they were honest about it and saying, yeah, we want this taught in the classroom, some elements of critical race theory are good, then we can debate on that level. But they know that people aren't feeling that. They know that parents are not going to want their children to be told that they're an oppressor or that they're hopelessly oppressed. That's why they're lying about it. What do you guys think? All right. Racer Dave. This is a great point. This is yet another reason why we need to stop thinking that banning critical race theory is a victory. It's not. If anything, it might be a Pyrrhic victory, one that causes us more damage than good. Because as Racer Dave says, now the precepts will continue to be taught, but not be called CRT. You can see that pivot from the left in the past few weeks. You are absolutely right. That's why when you think you're banning something, you're not really banning it. And even if you are, if you're not defeating the idea with a better idea, the left is going to play the long game and they're going to continue changing minds. And then those bans are going to be overturned. Those bans can easily be overturned tomorrow if they wanted to. And the thing is that how do you even enforce the ban? Especially since, again, like I said, there is some truth to the notion that Republicans don't know what critical race theory is. So they can even water some of it down and still distill that into their classrooms. And you can't ban it because the people that are responsible for the banning don't know what to ban. And what I'm afraid of happening also, guys, is that they might start punishing teachers for teaching critical race theory when they're not really teaching it. If that happens, that'll be a huge mess. There will be a huge blowback, and we'll probably lose this battle. So let's hope that doesn't happen. What else we got? Oh, excuse me. And this is another issue that Patricia brought up. See, that's why I missed you. You're smart. It's not just about race theory. They've added so much more than racial history. More than racial history, yes, and more teaching about how America's hopelessly corrupt. But we also need to focus on areas outside of race, because a lot of you guys don't know that your kids might be being taught stuff about sexuality that you may not be on board with. And if you don't know about it, you can't opt your kid out of it, because a lot of these schools won't tell you, or they'll take very minimal steps to make sure that you know about it. I mean, I've written on stories where high schoolers are being taught about pornography. They're being taught porn literacy. It was happening in a New York school. There are other areas. The leftists here in Austin try to inject education with lessons about the alphabet community, LGBTQ, and to teach them sexually explicit lessons. Now, that got voted down. This was a couple years ago. But still, they're not just trying to sneak critical race theory into your children's curriculum. They're trying to get some other stuff into their minds. That's why we've got to be focusing locally, because if we don't, we'll miss it. That's why conservatives need to be getting on these school boards. I don't care if you live in a blue city. I think a lot of parents on the left wouldn't approve of this either. They may vote Democrat. That doesn't mean that they're down with all this radical stuff. The school in New York, in New York City, most of those parents are liberals, but they had a huge problem with what they were trying to teach their kids. So if this doesn't teach us anything else, it teaches us that the focus is local, because Biden wouldn't do anything about this if he could. But even so, when we get a Republican president in office, he's not going to be able to do much about this. You got to get with your local government. Let's see what else we got. Mrs. Pinky, what's up, sis? Yeah, Rufo admitted that was his goal, was to get it all labeled CRT, which is one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard. I don't have anything against this guy personally. I've seen some of his stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty solid. This was a dumb idea. I get why he's doing it, and this is the type of thing that the left would try, but this will backfire so badly and so quickly. Because again, like I said, if you start labeling stuff as critical race theory that clearly is not, we're going to lose the argument, because now we've lost credibility to those who might be more in the middle on this and might be kind of wondering what all this stuff is about. We got to make sure that our arguments are on point. They don't have to be perfect. But saying that everything is critical race theory, the only people that will work with are conservatives if you're preaching to the choir. But they're already convinced. So you don't need to do that. Don't lie about it. Hit it straight on. Even if something isn't critical race theory, again, woke theology is just as dangerous. There's a lot of wokeness being taught in schools that doesn't necessarily fit under the umbrella of critical race theory. We got to come against that too, and we need to be accurate about it. I would actually prefer that we just call it all woke theology, because critical race theory is woke, right? So it all fits under that umbrella, instead of switching it and trying to have everything fit under critical race theory. Let's see. Yeah, kids in schools are being taught that my daughter is automatically a racist because she was born white. Well, that's not true. She's racist because you taught her to be racist, Patricia. No, I'm just playing. I'm just kidding. Let's see what else we got here. What else we got? Yeah, and here's another good point, Patricia. Teach our kids to think critically about it. That's why I'm not really in favor of banning. Now, here's the thing. If the teachers are just teaching this like it's fact and not a theory, and they're not teaching other points of view, then we got a problem. But that's why we get on school boards, or we elect people on school boards who can push back on that. But the bottom line is that your kid is going to get exposed to critical race theory. It may not happen now, but it's going to happen when they get in college. Even if they don't get in college, they are pushing this. And I know they like to refer to it as more of an obscure idea. It kind of is, but not really. I mean, like, the elements of that theory are being taught, and it's best to just teach your kids how to think critically about it, how to dig deeper, get them to get the gears turning, rather than just saying, "Oh, don't just ban the idea and think that that's gonna be safe." Let's see what else we got here. Aaron, I haven't seen you in a while. Talk to your kids daily about what they're being taught. Ask probing questions, because they don't recognize the progressive lexicon well enough to alert you to when things get shady. Yes. And it's also a good way to warn them when this stuff is coming up. I don't know if you're familiar with Keisha King, actually. And the way she found out that her daughter was being taught CRT is because her daughter basically had some red flags go off when she was being taught this stuff. And she went to her mom and she went to Keisha and told her about it. So that's a good idea. Keisha King is the black mother who was in Florida speaking at the school board and kind of ripping critical race theory to pieces. So she went viral and all that. All the major conservative outlets are having her on. She's awesome. Let's see. All right. So last thing I want to talk about is, I forgot. Oh, right. We're going to talk about the border again. I know I've been talking about the border a lot. It's an important issue for the country, but also in this particular instance, for the kids. And if you're sensitive about issues pertaining to kids being abused, I'm just going to let you know that's what I'm going to be talking about. I guess that's a trigger warning, but it's not going to be graphic or anything, but I'm going to be talking about the issue. Now, as you know, Biden's border crisis has been getting worse and worse and worse, and I've been covering it a lot. We've been having hundreds of thousands of migrants coming to the southern border, and the administration doesn't know what to do about it, even though they essentially invited these people to come up. We've got, over 100,000 unaccompanied minors who were sent by their parents to make the journey to the southern border, hoping to get into the United States. And these children, they're first held by Border Patrol, and I think after 48 or 72 hours, they're supposed to be transferred to Health and Human Services. That's how it's supposed to go. Now, a few months ago, I reported on the fact that that wasn't actually happening. Some were being held by Border Patrol for weeks in substandard conditions before they're being sent over to Health and Human Services. Once they arrive with HHS, they're held in a detention center until they can be matched up and be united with relatives that they have already living in the United States. Now, that can take some time. However, BBC News and CBS News, and as of right now, those are the only two major media outlets who are reporting on this. The rest of the media is ignoring it. But they found some very disturbing information from some of the staffers who are working at a detention facility here in Texas. This detention center is in El Paso, Texas. It's actually at Fort Bliss. There was a shooting there a few years ago. But despite, all the years of fake outrage and virtue signaling that the left was doing when Trump was putting kids in cages and all that jazz, Biden is doing the exact same thing, and very few on the left are calling him out. There are some, but very few. And BBC News and CBS News found out that the state that the conditions that these children are being forced to live in are disgusting. They are horrible. As bad or worse than prison. So, BBC News reported that the children being kept at Fort Bliss are languishing in substandard conditions, and they're dealing with disease, they're dealing with unsafe food, mental disorders, and even sexual abuse. One of the children told one of the staffers who talked to BBC that they were being served undercooked meat. One of the staffers told BBC that one of the kids said, sometimes the chicken had blood, the meat very red. We couldn't stand our hunger and we ate it, but we got sick from it. So that brings up two issues. These kids were so hungry that they were eating undercooked chicken. We all know where that can lead to. But it gets worse. The children are also being subjected to all kinds of diseases. COVID-19 is one of them. It's been rampant. And by the way, this fort is holding over 2,000 minors, mostly teenagers. And a lot of these minors are becoming sick because they're living in close proximity to one another. They're staying in tents. Not even in cages, not even cells. They're living in tents. And they're living on top of one another, basically. It's not like they're living in separate tents. There's like big tent that houses a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, lice became an issue along with COVID-19. One of the tents, and this tent housed 800 girls, they had to shut it down because they had a lice infection, a major lice infection, and they didn't have enough lice kits to deal with it. They didn't have the resources to help these kids. Now, again, I alluded to sexual abuse. One of these staffers, they had a secret recording of a meeting, and they gave it to BBC. And it revealed that this employee was voicing her concerns about how minors were being treated. She said, quote, "We have already caught staff with minors inappropriately." Another employee told the press that the Department of Homeland Security spoke with members of the staff about an incident involving rape. Quote, "DHS mentioned there was a rape. They are giving the girls pregnancy tests." This is according to one of the employees, who also said, quote, And I heard the other night that another contractor was caught in a boy's tent, doing things with him. Now this is already pretty bad, right? This should not be happening. Now, CBS News reported that, quote, the level of distress among migrant boys and girls held by the U.S. government at a tent city in the Texas desert has become so alarming that they are constantly monitored for incidents of self-harm, panic attacks, and escape attempts. The report says, the CBS report says some of the children have, quote, required one-on-one supervision 24 hours a day to ensure they don't hurt themselves. And some have refused to eat, or they spend most of their days sleeping on cots. Depression, right? Some of the migrant children have also been seen with cut marks on their arms and wrists. Some of these kids told members of the staff that they were using their identification cards to try to cut themselves. Now, CBS also reported, quote, federal officials became so concerned about migrant teens harming themselves that they banned pencils, pens, scissors, nail clippers, and regular toothbrushes inside tents housing hundreds of children, according to an internal document. Workers at the site said they were even instructed to remove the metal nose clips from the N95 face masks for COVID. One of the girls, a 13-year-old girl from Honduras, who was detained at Fort Bliss for almost 2 months, and this is actually one of the reasons why they're going so stir crazy, why they're getting anxiety and depression, because not only are they living in these horrible conditions, a lot of these kids are there for months. And this little girl said that she's the one that told them about how they were using identification cards to cut themselves. She was placed on the suicide watch list along with 28 other kids. And she said, quote, I have been here for a really long time. I really want to leave. It's sad because all my friends are waiting for the staff to call my name to be released because I have been here for such a long time. And one of the employees told CBS that these children have gone from a small cage, when they were being held by Border Patrol, to a larger cage at Fort Bliss. It is a juvenile detention facility. And that's why I said this is like jail. This is basically prison conditions. As a matter of fact, I think our prisoners are treated better than this. Undercooked meat? It's insane. Some of the kids have even tried to run away. 5 children tried to get away. They tried to jump the fence. And that obviously didn't work. But they ended up being transferred to another facility. I'm not saying that this is happening at every single detention facility, guys, but it definitely is happening at Fort Bliss, and I would suspect that it's happening elsewhere as well. And one of the reasons why they tried to escape was because it was too crowded, it was hot, food wasn't good. And when I say food wasn't good, again, I don't think they're talking about taste. I'm just saying they're just giving them nasty-ass food, unhealthy. On top of that, one of the employees told the press that there's very little communicated to these kids about the process and about the amount of time they'll be here. So when they go there, they don't even know what's going on. They're not told about the process. They're not educated on what's happening so that they know what to expect. So the employee said they live in constant doubt, uncertainty, and fear about what's going to happen to them. Now, the hard part, and here's another thing I'll let you know about. CBS News, they said, unlike traditional Health and Human Services shelters, the emergency sites do not have state licenses that certify they can care for minors. They also have lower standards of care and limited services, including case management, which allows children to be released to family members in the U.S. Now, here's the thing. This is just wrong on a ton of different levels. I don't even know where to begin. First off, why are we abusing children? Because that is what we are doing. The United States of America is abusing these children. People can make the argument that, they shouldn't have sent their kids up here. I totally get that. But if it happens, that doesn't give us license to abuse these kids. At the very least, they should be able to have meat that's been cooked all the way, right? It's not like they're eating a rare steak like I like undercooked chicken. They're being sexually abused. At least one was raped. They have to give out pregnancy tests. This is stuff that parents do when they're sending their kids up here. they give them a birth control because they might get raped along the way, which is horrible. But when they get here, they shouldn't have to worry about that. They shouldn't have to worry about that anymore, right? At the very least, we need to be making sure that they're safe, and we're not. And this is not the first time I've heard of sexual assault of minors at one of our facilities. At others, I've heard of it as well. The other issue here is, and I don't always like to go into this argument, but I think this is serious enough to warrant it because it shows how horrible the media is. We know exactly how this would go down if this happened under Trump, right? If this happened under Trump, you would have CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC. They would be getting wall-to-wall coverage. Children getting raped in our facilities. But, like I said, BBC and CBS were the only ones who bothered to do this investigation and report on it. Kudos to them. I'll give them props for it. The American people should know about this, but they're not going to, because the press would rather protect President Joe Biden than actually to report on something that is happening on our soil that should not be happening. If more people knew about it, on both sides, I think, they would pressure the government, and people would be like, what the hell are you doing? But the press doesn't want you to know. It's disgusting. Now, I'm going to tell you, obviously, I wrote an article about it, but it's depressing how disgusting some people are. Now, here's the thing. I get it. If they want to be biased towards Biden, I get it. But when it comes to certain issues like children being abused, you would think that they would at least put that bias to the side for a few minutes and make sure the American people knew about this. But they don't. That is what we're dealing with, guys. These are the type of people that give us our news. I was actually surprised that Fox News hasn't even reported on it. Maybe they have by now. But again, Fox News, if they knew about this, they would report it. And sadly, it's because it would harm the Biden administration. But still, that's what we deal with our media here. That's why I prefer independent journalists, because independent journalists are more likely to actually care. They may have a political agenda, but at the same time, it's not as pronounced as what you see with a lot of the mainstream outlets here. What do you guys think? What do we got here? Yeah, Patricia, that is the worst. Those babies deserve better than to be trafficked into our system. Yeah, I mean, if they're getting sexually abused, that is like trafficking, basically. I'm not going to say it's to that extent, but still, it's an issue. Fort Bliss is using tents, former emergency COVID hospital tents. Okay. I wonder, if it's a fort, I would think that they would have rooms to keep the children in. There was another aspect of this, like when they get sandstorms, the kids get covered in sand, they get covered in dirt, which is also unhealthy because they're being kept outside. I don't get it. I don't see any good reason for this. What else we got? They need to be sent back to their own countries like Trump had put in effect. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that, especially if we're going to be abusing them when they're here, right? I mean, gosh. Let's see. I have worked at migrant facilities on the El Paso border. I have never seen the conditions you are describing. Shocking if true. And like I said, I don't think this is happening at every single detention center. But at least at Fort Bliss, it is. These are two separate investigations, BBC and CBS News. So I don't think that people are making this up. I don't think that they're exaggerating. I actually have a feeling that it might even be worse than what we know about, because they couldn't have interviewed everybody, right? Excuse me. Once again, these are pawns to the left, just like inner cities. You're right. These kids are only pawns. They don't care about these kids. Again, if this were under Trump, they would only be reporting on it, not because they care about what's happening to them, but because it's a weapon they can use against the orange man. Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. How can you not cook chicken properly? It's not hard. It's not hard. But the argument always becomes, but Trump was worse. Well, they can't say that here. Maybe that's another reason why they're not reporting it. Because I don't think that anything as this bad happened under Trump. And it was bad. I'm not going to say Trump handled everything the right way. I have some issues with the way he handled the border issues as well. But as far as I remember, I don't remember anything going this deep. Let's see. Oh, Aaron, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Jeff, I have more background ideas for you, but decided against it because I don't want Cousin Candy to see it and name you in a petty loss. That heifer doesn't even know who I am. I'm fine. You can hit me up. Thanks for the super chat, though. I appreciate it. The system is overwhelmed, obviously, but they won't tell them to stop coming. They're despicable. Oh, no, hold on. Black Hillary went to Guatemala and said, don't come. Yeah, like way too late. After her and her boss basically invited them here. Like, everything that's happening to them is on Biden's hands. It'd be one thing if he didn't do that and had sent a more aggressive message on this, and then they still came. Okay, fine. You didn't invite him here. You still need to take care of it, but I'm not going to blame you for it. But no, he gave them the impression that the red carpet would be rolled out for them if they came to the southern border. He even said during one of the debates that he wanted to see a surge of migrants at the southern border. So yeah, this is horrible. This is, I don't exaggerate a lot, and I do use hyperbole, but when I do, it's because I'm being funny and it's obvious. But this is a humanitarian issue. Like, kids should not be treated this way. If this happened in a different country, we would be saying the same thing. And again, it's not every detention center. And thank God that these employees, good people, step forward to say something, because guess what? The Biden administration is not allowing HHS or Border Patrol to speak to the press. They're keeping this stuff hidden. They have a huge lack of transparency on the migrant crisis, and a few journalists have said something about it, but most haven't, because, again, they're the propaganda ministry. So, yeah, I'm glad that some of these people came forward, and I'm glad that BBC and CBS were willing to report it, because this is important stuff. Our country should be better than this. We shouldn't be doing this. So if we're not living up to our values, the American people have a right to know about it and to protest it. But I'm going to leave it off here. It's Friday night. I've got some steaks to grill. I've got some video games to play. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Again, if you want to support my work, just sign up for my community at afreshperspective.locals.com. If you want to do a one-time donation, it's right there. If you're getting something out of this, if I'm making you think, then anything is appreciated. But until next time, keep your minds free.